الله أكبر حي على الصلاة الله أكبر.
Islam Morris, please be seated. I rise, giving all praises to Allah, the Father of the universe, cherisher and sustainer of all the balanced universes. I extend the highest of honors to His holy and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam. I extend high honors to his forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who did indeed warn and stir up the nations, Islam. Extending honors to the Moorish flag, the red flag with the 5 points of the green star in the center. These 5 points represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. These are the 5 highest principles known to man. Islam? Extend honors as well to the American flag, also known as the Stars and Stripes. This flag exists as a constant reminder that Europeans owe you the Moors with compound interest. Islam? This is also the flag of our birth. Islam, Moors? Giving honor to noble Sheik staff and noble Vanguard staff who keep the peace. And giving honors to you, the Ills and Bays, for without you, there is no Moorish movement. Islam? How's everyone on the holy night? Praise Allah, praise Allah. Before I begin tonight, a lot of times, when we go into our measures, we might have done our little study and I got your little notes put together and stuff like that or whatever. But a lot of times we, are negligent in, spreading the word relative to, the health and the well-being of Moorish Americans that are in the temples and throughout the temples nationwide. Back in, I believe it was September or November, I forget the month, of last year, we did a book signing up in Raleigh, North Carolina. We were invited by, temple number 39 of Raleigh, North Carolina, affectionately called Bethlehem, by Grand Sheik Nasir-El and his wife, Sister Hope El. Sister Hope El was just recently in the hospital, and so she had a procedure and she's just come home, and she's gaining strength and so on and so forth. But I spoke to the Grand Sheik last night, and he just asked that the Moors just send out positive affirmations and meditations for our sister's well-being. Because Moors, I'm here to bear witness that when we were there, I think Brother Raphael can bear me witness that these are some Muslims. These Moors love the Prophet. And they provide a pure example of what it is to be a Moorish American Muslim. Islam. So, just for, the well-being of our sister, Sister Hope El, just have a silent, a silent period. Just keep her name in your mind. Sister Hope El, Temple 39, Raleigh, North Carolina. Islam. Ameen. Praise Allah, Moors. We have to remember to care about one another. Islam, Moors? Moving on, in that same spirit about caring for one another, looking at what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought us, Moors, we have to begin to, take seriously what the Prophet brought. If we don't take it seriously, no one else will. Islam, Moors? One of the Moorish elders, Grand Sheik Clarence Prather-El, good friend of Temple number 19. The more, he said something a lot, and it kind of grew on me the more he said it. He says, Moors, y'all got to stop putting stuff before the Prophet. We have to stop putting stuff before the Prophet. Prophet Noble Drew Ali says, this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens. That's called, in terms of, speaking or oration, that's considered an absolute statement, meaning that within that statement there is no interpretation, right? So the fact that he injected the word only, there's a lot of stuff you can study, right? But this is the only sole, meaning further driving home only, right? Only sole foundation, that we must depend upon for our earthly salvation as American citizens. So all this, to camelback on, Brother Actor Sheik Raphael Hakeem Bey's statement regarding to ADOS and reparations, so on and so forth. The Moorish Science Temple of America has so much to contribute to that argument. So much, right? But we have to understand what we were brought, how it was brought, and the spirit in which it's supposed to be delivered, right? Key to that is keeping it intact the way that he brought it. You know what I'm saying? That's all the elements combined. Let me just draw from, take a reading from the Holy Quran, the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'd like to draw from chapter 48. Started in instruction 5, 48:5. And while you all are getting there, the Holy Quran and the Moorish Science Temple of America, divinely prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali, by the guiding of his father God Allah, the great God of the universe, to redeem man from his sinful and fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of life with his father God Allah. Islam, all right? Chapter 48. You hear Islam when you're there? Islam. Chapter 48, instruction 5. And that is the end of time and the fulfilling of prophecies. Instruction 5. That the world, let's go to instruction 4. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc. That the world may hear and know the truth that among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Instruction 6. We as a clean and pure nation descended from the inhabitants of Africa do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation. Instruction 8. While we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which is founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. Islam, Moors? Islam. You know, that statement just jumped out at me. I've been reading this for years. Instruction 7. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers. So we know the teachings of Jesus existed before that, right? But we're returning that back to the European as it was prepared by their forefathers. Give that back. That don't belong to you. Islam? The mutation of Jesus' teachings as it became, we're returning that back. Right. Islam? But what I really was drawing off of was, neither, instruction 6, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Now, our people worship the European. Let's just call it for what it is, right? A lot of times we give worship to him, in our adoration of blackness. That's worship of the European, because he gave that to you, right? And all the trappings that go along with that. You know what I'm saying? Everything that's connected to that. One of the key things that's connected with that is that the thought of being anti-religion. That is not an Asiatic thought. That's right. You know what I'm saying? You can't show me, and I study history, and I'm quite sure you all do too. You can't show me a period of time in history where our people have been a secular people. You know what I'm saying? We've always had religious principles, which to us was our government. That's right. Islam, Moors? Giving you an example of that being a European thought. Oh, right. This is a pamphlet entitled Liberation Without Gods. Notice it said not freedom, it said liberation, right? By Bob Avakian, right? Just to be clear who we're talking about. This is him. Okay. This is him, okay. Liberation without gods. What is liberation and how does it differ from freedom?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, you pointing the ethers, Mo. I was trying to follow you, Mo. Islam, Mo.
Islam. Arise, giving the highest of praise to the great God Allah and the highest honor to the only prophet over From what I understand about liberation or liberty, it comes from liber, or which was, from my understanding, it was either a Greek god or some European god or deity, and a person seeking liberty is seeking to be free without bounds of law, outside of, even outside of morals.
That's not.
I guess I would say, as where freedom, you have divine rights you know, to be a citizen and do things that upstanding citizens do, and not be bound. But you know, it's much different from liberty, and where, you know, freedom. You know, people with freedom have principle.
Islam. The Prophet gives it the great Al-Quran where he says, it is free to act, therefore it is, is accountable for its actions.
That's right.
You know, so he gives you, a drawing on free, right? But he also gives you in that same breath being accountable for your actions. So freedom is accountability. So when we demonstrate love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, that freedom don't mean do what you like, whenever you like, however you like. There's rules and regulations, and we must live the life accordingly. Islam Morris? Well, according to this individual, he states, let me draw from here. He says, in the socialist society we establish upon overthrowing this imperialist system, the right to believe in religion will be upheld. But at the same time, there will be a determined, all-sided, and bold ideological struggle waged, and systematic education will be carried out to oppose religious beliefs. And that the Prophet uses that same language in Moorish literature, but from a different perspective. He says, remember that oppose religious beliefs. I'll get back to that. Why? He says, because when all is said and done, religious beliefs keep people from really getting a true and deep understanding of the world and of the forces actually operating in it, both in nature and in human society, and from fully acting on that understanding to change the world, to eliminate exploitation and oppression completely, and continue advancing human society. Religion teaches that there are beings and forces beyond the ability of human beings to ever really and fully understand, and that in fact, human beings must now and forever submit themselves to the will of these supernatural beings and forces. Religion says that the only possible human fulfillment is to act and fulfill the will and commandments of such supernatural beings and forces, gods, as interpreted by human beings, of course, religious leaders. These religious beliefs of all kinds are fundamentally wrong. There are no supernatural beings and forces. All reality, all of existence consists of nothing else but matter and motion. Okay, Barata. Assuming, this him right here, this him. Assuming many different and ultimately infinite forms. There is nothing in the universe that is absolutely unknowable. There are things human beings don't know or can't understand at any given time, but what we don't know now we may come to understand in the future. What we can't affect and change today, we may learn to affect and change tomorrow. And all the more will this be possible when the chains on human beings and human society, invisible as well as visible chains, shackles on the minds as well as on the body, are broken and cast aside as the masses of people rise up and overthrow the imperialist system and all systems based on exploitation and all relations based on oppression. What are your thoughts? The floor is open. I feel scimitars coming out the sheath.
Well,
Islam, Brother Yosef, you have the floor.
Okay, Islam. A lot of thoughts, are kind of just going through my mind after thinking that. However, I just have to disagree, basically with his understanding of religion. I don't know the author, but it just kind of sounds to me that he hasn't studied the art of meditation.
Demonstrate, unfold that. What do you mean?
All right, so when I first begin, I'll say waking up.
That's not.
Preaching in church and everything. And I started studying religion because I was beginning to have the same thoughts as the author, and that some of my friends shared and other people shared. And I started translating and things. And then I was doing this alone, and I was sitting, and a quiet, still voice started just kind of talking to me. And it told me to just start studying meditation, the art of breathing, that breath. So I know the Prophet speaks of the holy breath. When you start to use that holy breath, you can connect to the Allah which is inside of you.
Islam.
And it just sounds like I'll stop right there.
Islam.
I'll just stop right there.
Islam. Thanks for your portion. Islam.
Islam. I would say from listening to that part that you read, he was speaking. Basically, what he was trying to do is not be accountable, not want to be held accountable, saying that these things that we create through religion that govern us really don't exist, and it's just saying we can explain things that you know, the things that we say we can't explain, he said it can be explained, and he was right to that degree, you know. But those things that can be explained, it'll show you that it's, you know what I mean, that is higher forces that's working.
Always.
Every time you look in the mirror, you know, you see the image of that force.
Islam. Let me camelback. You know, maybe when he looks in the mirror, he doesn't.
True.
Maybe he's drawing off his own understanding, or his own experience. Real quick, let me just throw a word out there. Y'all have heard this phrase, existentialism? Existentialism.
I have heard of it.
Right? For those taking notes, existentialism. Okay, I feel like I'm at a spelling bee. Existentialism. E-X-I-S-T, existent. I-A-L-I-S-M, existentialism.
E-X-I-S.
Aquila in the B moment. A-L-I-S-M, existentialism, right? Existentialism is a philosophy that basically formulated itself like, it's existed as long as Europeans have been around, but the term became popularized around the time right after World War II it was, after all the bombings that took place and everything, and you know, the amount of decimation that took place in Europe led them to believe that they were alone in the universe. Like, there can't be no God, there can't be no whatever. So Nietzsche and all these different philosophers, Sigmund Freud, and all them were, you know, coming out of this era, you know what I mean, where, you know, it was almost over for Europe, right? Drawing off an even sadder perspective of, you know, the European nations only having earthly salvation, right? The prophet warns of that because they formulated Christianity as it was prepared by their forefathers solely for earthly salvation. So from the divine aspect, that wasn't even their purpose for getting involved in this to begin with. So this gentleman is actually honoring his forefathers by his thought, Islam. Now, where we, you know, we as an Asiatic race mess up is that we'll adopt that thought. You know, thinking, you know, us being the pretended wise, we find ourselves in a position like, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. You know, or, you know, it's not about religion, or, you know, stuff like, you know, where if you study history, you know this can't be true. You know, the Vatican created Islam. Y'all have heard this one, right? I'm not the only one. You've heard this, right? But if you actually do the knowledge to that, like, you know, how, okay, so you have like between 6 and 9 wars called the Crusades between Christianity and Islam. If Islam is not a new, but instead the old time religion, that means that Islam, as we understand it, predates the Vatican.
That's right.
So how could that institution give birth to our Islam? Islam? You know? So, Islam. Brother Akil, I didn't want to take your thought. Do you remember your thought, brother?
Islam.
Okay.
I wrote it down actually.
Okay. Islam.
Islam. What I was gonna say was, it sounded. You asked, what did that sound like? My initial response or initial thought was that it sounded literally like when you leave a child to the house.
Islam.
It's like, it sounds like the child is taking over the house.
Islam, more. Actually, and that's pretty much the case. You know what I mean? You know, to unfold the thought I was talking about earlier when he mentioned the term to oppose religious beliefs. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali says, the Moorish Science Temple of America has received, and this is from Moorish literature, Moorish leaders' historical message to America. He says, the Moorish Science Temple of America has received some opposition and criticism. In the main, the opposition has come from certain Christian ministers. They have expressed themselves as being opposed to our propagation of the Mohammedan religion, possibly because the promotion of the Mohammedan faith among our people in the United States is considered by them in terms as something new. Whatever the reasons may be for the opposition, the legal right to oppose citizens, individuals, and organizations alike for their religious beliefs does not exist in the United States. The door of religious freedom made by the American Constitution swings open to all, and people may enter through it and worship as they desire. Without religious freedom, no search for truth would be possible. Without religious freedom, no discovery of truth would be useful. Without religious freedom, religious progress would be checked, and we would no longer march forward toward the nobler life which the future holds for the races of men. Without religious freedom, there will be no inspiration to lift our heads and gaze with fearlessness into the vast beyond, seeking a hope eternal. It is a sad weakness in us, after all, to oppose our fellow men for their religious beliefs. Same language, right? He says, for if there are angels who record the sorrows of men, as well as their sins, they certainly know how many and deep are the useless sorrows that spring forth from such opposition. Possibly love and time will counsel our ancient hatreds in this regard and prove that in mankind, tolerance is better than unwarranted opposition. So that's the position of the prophet, that religiously we're to be tolerant, right? Whereas the European is coming intolerant, don't be religious, forget what your forefathers say, listen to my ideal. Islam and our people and our carnal getting understanding have adopted this, anti-religious thing, whatever. And if you look at our lifestyles reflect that.
Indeed.
Where, there's no peace in the home, there's adversities, you know what I'm saying? We're in a carnal plane, so that comes with a certain level of adversity, right? But, the holy instructions give you the means to throw it off.
Further exacerbated. Yeah.
Islam, that's why we have to fight for our holy instructions, and the laws that come forth from that, and not allow people to put something on us because it sounds good. Again, you have to honor your forefathers. Islam. All right. Draw from a verse in chapter 11, I want to say. Pardon self, an instruction in chapter 11. That was something that Moors recently fell out about in Facebook. I heard a sheik saying it's a verse, not an instruction. Islam more. I was raised a Christian. Islam, it happens. It's a slip. All right. Chapter 11, Jesus Barata, and it's ironically Barata after reading the European, right? Jesus and Barata, together they read the sacred books. The sacred books, plural. Islam. And that's something we have to remind the Moors, man, that, Asiatic spirit, when they, want to learn more about the Moorish position, is that, we can study it all. You know what I'm saying? Like, our root is Islamism. You know what I'm saying? But that actually empowers us to go and understand that every nation has a name for Allah. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the, Brother Sheik Raphael Bey and I were discussing that earlier in the week, and I think that the hang up with our people coming over to the Prophet is the Islamic surface. You know what I'm saying? They see the feds, they hear us saying Islam, whatever, and they're thinking that our draw of Islam is what they've heard. But man knows not about what he's told. Islam. It says, instruction 1, among the Buddhist priests, there was one who saw lofty wisdom in the words that Jesus spoke. It was Barato Arabo. Actually, we're going to add a couple verses. Together, Jesus and Barato read the Jewish Psalms and prophets, read the Vedas and the Avesta, and the wisdom of Gautama. Matter of fact, I'll stop there. I won't burden the Moors, right? So they read the Jewish Psalms, right? It says, and the prophets. What does it mean, and the prophets? Okay, so and the prophets. So in the Old Testament, because there's really no Old and European to that. But as they have it divided, you have what they call the Nebiim and the Ketubim, right? The major and the minor prophets, right? So, you have your, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, so on and so forth, right? Then you have what they classify as your minor prophets would be like your Hezekiah and so on and so forth, like Malachi and, you know what I mean? Nehemiah, the smaller books, right? But they, according to this record, it says that Jesus and Barata sat down and read all of this. And then it says they read the Vedas, which some would argue are some of the oldest texts on earth, scripturally speaking. The Avesta, everybody heard of the Avesta? Okay, so for taking notes, write down Zend Avesta, Z-E-N-D, Avesta. The Zend Avesta is the scripture of Zoroaster, or Zoroastrianism, right? Zoroastrianism is where our Hebrew brothers got the concept of teaching in polarities, opposites. Okay, and the deity, the chief deity in Zoroastrianism is Ahura Mazda, A-H-U-R-A, Mazda like the car, M-A-Z-D-A. And yes, and the one that's the polarity to him, kind of like your shaitan, somewhat, is Ormuzd, which is O-R-M-U-Z-D, Ormuzd. Okay, and the wisdom of the Gautama. Buddha, like most prophets, didn't write anything himself, but his disciples did. And one of the writings is called the Dhammapada. It's spelled D-H-A-M-M-A-P-A-D-A. Again, D-H-A-M-M-A-P-A-D-A. The Dhamma.
Big book.
Dhammapada is not a game. Yeah, it's serious. Yeah.
Spell it again, please.
DHAMM,
D-A-A-M.
two M's, APADA. Yeah, the Dhammapada is pretty tough, man. It's like you know, they were writing down the best they could, because you know, like his methodology teaching was just like what we're doing right now. We just building, like, so they'd be walking, they come across a particular thing. It was like a teaching moment. He just get to demonstrate, and they were trying to jot down as much as they could. However, there was a period of time when they, you know, he was traveling with his students, and like a lot of the scrolls and stuff got destroyed. So from memory, they tried to piece together, you know, the best they could. So what they were doing, you know, as Jesus sitting with them there, comparing it, you know, they building the temple of the perfected man. They do like we do in Sunday school. You know what I'm saying? You know, iron sharpening iron. You know, and sometimes there'll be a thought that's thrown out that's might not be in conjunction with what I know. So we go a little further to try to square it. You know what I mean? And that's what all this whole chapter 11 is, right? But that's what our forefathers did when they traveled around the planet to the different people they did commerce and trade with, and so on and so forth. They were building like that. You know, like that's in our ancestry. You know, something I'm going to get into in a short bit, because I'm not going to keep you all long. There's a book called The Odyssey of Ibn Battuta. Right, Ibn Battuta was one of your forefathers who was from Morocco, who was a traveler and a historian, right? And if you notice on the book, more, can you zoom in on that cover more? You see a ship, and you see the Moors navigating the ship, see them? But you see the lighter skinned Arabs and stuff in the ship riding. So the Moors were the navigators. You see what I'm saying? So they depict that in this book, and you know, it shows like his global. He was, you know, I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna flip this. The European, Marco Polo, is their version of Ibn Battuta. I almost said it in reverse. I almost said he's our version of Marco. Right? But Ibn Battuta was something said. He did a lot of chronicles about different nations he saw and compared it with what he knew from the Moors. You know, so very, very interesting text. So, you know, so Jesus sat and read from the Jewish Psalms. Can we read the Psalms together, Moors? Islam, Moors. Let's see why Jesus was reading the Psalms. Okay? And we're not gonna do the whole. We're gonna draw off chapter 119, Psalms 119, right? Because Prophet David, peace be upon him, Prophet David was a serious brother. I like him as an analogy for the Moorish Americans or the Asiatics in America, because he was truth and falsehood strangely mixed. You know, he was a prophet of Allah, and Allah chose him sometimes because of his faults. You know, because he knew he would repent and go even harder coming out through the repentance, right? But Psalms 119, verse 1, because this is the Bible. Verse 1, blessed are the undefiled in the way. Now I'm reading from an Aramaic translation, so it may read slightly different than yours. Blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law of the Lord. Now that in the way, y'all have heard of Taoism, T-A-O, but it's pronounced Tao. Tao is translated as the way. You know what I'm saying? Its symbol being the yin and yang, right? So that's an ancient concept, which the Hebrews even had. Islam? So blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law of the Lord. One thing about Prophet David, he was big on the law. You know what I'm saying? Getting us to stand on the law, the commandments and the judgments and so on and so forth, right? I'm going to go down to instruction 10. It says, with my whole heart have I sought thee. Oh, let me not wander from thy commandments. Islam, Moors? Right? So again, with his whole heart. So in other words, he was completely invested in seeking out the law and the commandments of the Most High. You know what I mean? And standing on that. You know, and a lot of times I think that, you know, the analogy in ancient times was that, you know, a man cannot have two hearts. A lot of times we find ourselves in a position where we demonstrate two hearts. You know what I'm saying? Because we find ourselves split and things that we know where we're supposed to be, we're not there, or we don't give as much as we're supposed to, but we claim that we love it. Islam was? But the forefather said he gives his whole heart, right? Let's go over to instruction 33. It says, teach me, O Lord, in the way, part 7. Teach me, O Lord, the way of thy commandments, and I should keep them unto the end. Islam was? You know, so this was a man that's seeking to stand on a particular type of foundation. Go to verse 37. Turn away mine eyes that they may not behold falsehood, and quicken thou me in thy way. All right. So in all the word, there's only two things: truth and falsehood. All right. So he's demonstrating that if we turn my eyes away from it, I don't even want to see it. Go down to verse 40. Behold, I have delighted in thy precepts. Quicken me in thy righteousness. What is a precept? We have a dictionary right there. The big one. Gratitude. Precept.
Like a maxim.
Similar. Precept. This is coming from the New Webster's Encyclopedic Dictionary of the English Language. It says precept, a commandment intended as an authoritative rule of action, a command respecting moral conduct, an injunction. From a legal perspective, it is a mandate in writing sent by a justice of the peace for bringing a person or record before him. Islam Morris? That is a precept. And I know I'm kind of doing this like a Sunday school lesson, but we can't allow ourselves to, a lot of times, one of our crucial character flaws that we'll see a word, know we don't know what it means and keep going. So sometimes we got to stop and define it. Go down to verse 46. It says, I will speak truthfully before the kings and will not be ashamed. Right? What's the duty of an angel?
Carry a message to the four corners
To the world. To all nations, right? So when you go to the four corners of the world, to all nations, right? What does it say? You speak truthfully before the kings, right? Like somebody demonstrated earlier, clearness and power. You know what I mean? That's the degree. But you can only do that, A, when you're living a life accordingly, and B, when you're practiced enough in that where it becomes first nature, not even your second nature, right? So when when it comes time, on a humbug, Islam, we know, come up and demonstrate. You don't got nothing prepared or nothing like that, but you just come up and, Islam. I want to draw something real quick. Pardon me. Just had a brief thought. John 6. Book of John. John chapter 6, verse 63. It is the spirit that gives life. The body is of no account. The words which I have spoken to you are the spirit and life. And the prophet says, every word I speak is spirit. Islam? So you have to learn how to call on the holy breath. So when it's time for you to come up and demonstrate, you call on that breath and demonstrate. Islam, Morris? All right? I'd like to go over to...
You said verse 63?
663. Yeah, John 663. But now in Psalms 119, verse 61, it says, the bands of the wicked have beset me, but I have not strayed from thy law. So, the excuse of like, I'm going through something right now, you know what I mean? And I can't come to the temple because that don't square. You know what I'm saying? You come to the temple because you're going through something. You arm, like in other words, that's using that as a justification of saying, I'm not gonna put my bulletproof vest on and walk through that firefight because I'm going through something at home. That don't make no kind of sense. Of course, you put your armor on when you got to walk through chaos, right? But your armor is your lessons, your divine lessons, your divine instructions. 64, the earth, O Lord, is full of mercy. Teach me thy statutes. That's an entirely different perspective from seeing things from an Asiatic perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like if you ask the average Asiatic, how you doing? Or what's going on, man? How you been? They hit you with the, oh man, it's hard, struggling, bills ain't, blah, 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 blah. He's not hitting you with the world is full of mercy. He don't even see that. Islam Morris? But somebody that stands on the law, you're supposed to know that all that you talking about is falsehood. So when you finish breathing all that falsehood, I'm gonna breathe some life on you. Islam Morris? But you can only do that when you filled up with that and stand on that as a foundation. Instruction 70. Their hearts are stubborn, but I keep the law. Islam Morris? That's Prophet David. Their hearts are stubborn, but I keep the law. So no matter what others do, you gotta keep the law. Islam Morris?
Islam, immediately it reminds me of the Book of Eli.
Islam, I just watched that like 2 days ago. Again. Yeah, not again. Their hearts are stubborn, but I keep the law. I think that's so full right there, because a lot of times, we leave a back door, because we personally going through something or whatever, man, or that other people are doing stuff. But it don't make no difference. The responsibility is on you to keep the law. You were born by yourself. You're gonna pass form by yourself. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be accountable for your actions. Islam. Instruction 73 says, thy hands have made me and fashioned me. Teach me thy law. Islam Morris? I'm gonna take that down to 80. So that those who revere thee may see and rejoice, because I have hoped in thy word. I know, O Lord, that thy judgments are right, and that thou in thy faithfulness has humbled me. Let, I pray thee, thy merciful kindness be my comfort, be for my comfort, according to thy word to thy servant. Let thy tender mercies come to me, that I may live, for I have been taught thy law. Let the wicked be ashamed, for they have humbled me unjustly. But I have meditated in thy precepts. I know a lot of Christians. I don't know too many of them that have read the Bible and said, I'm going to go meditate. But it's in the record. Islam Wars says, 79, and let those who reverence thee turn unto me, and those who have known thy testimonies. Let my heart meditate in thy statutes, that I be not ashamed. Islam Wars, you know, and then for instruction 73, verse 73, that 119:73, somebody have a Quran, open up chapter 35 in your Quran. Anyone? All is well.
Say it again. You said
Chapter 35, Mo.
chapter 30.
Holy Quran.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Holy Quran. I can say, Mo, you ain't bring the Prophet's record, Mo?
Yeah, I think you're talking about.
Trying to be a Prophet Muhammad, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Now, we ain't demonstrate Muhammad tonight, Mo. It's kind of harsh. All right? 35.
All right.
Instruction 10, when you get to 35. Okay, now, before you read that,
10.
I'm going back to Psalms 119:73. Thy hands have made me and fashioned me. Teach me thy law. Read instruction 10.
He hath instituted laws for the government of the world. He hath wonderfully varied them in all beings, and each by his nature conformeth to his will.
Praise Allah. Go down to 21, more same chapter.
Chapter 21.
Yeah, well, chapter 35, instruction 21.
Instruction 21.
Islam.
And in the laws he hath ordained as the rule of life, so kindly hath he united thy duty to thy nature, that obedience to his precepts is happiness to thyself.
Prophet Noble Drew Ali demonstrating King David. Islam. It's that precept again. Islam. But it's not, again, it's not something that's external that you're doing.
Exactly.
You being yourself and nobody else. Because it's united your nature and the law together. Islam? And let me get on instruction 24, same chapter.
24. Hath he established his laws in goodness and mercy? And shall he not punish the transgressors thereof?
Islam, more. In verse 76 of Psalms 119, let I pray thee thy merciful kindness, that mercy. Islam, these records are saying the same thing, and this is what Jesus and Barada were doing. As they laid the records out and was demonstrating between them, they realized they found something called a golden thread.
Indeed.
And that golden thread ran through all of the holy records, the true and divine records of the human race, Islam, or the human family. All right. Going down the instruction, verse 97 of Psalms 119. Listen to Prophet David. This is how the Moorish American Muslims need to be right here. 97. Oh, how I love thy law. It is my meditation all the day. Islam, Moors? How you going to be a law enforcer and you don't meditate on the law? Islam, Moors? All right. 99. It says, give me more understanding than all my teachers, for thy testimonies are my meditations. Instruction 100. I understand more than the elders, because I keep the statutes. See, it wasn't because of vanity, right? Because, ones do that. I know more than the sheiks, right? But is it because you're keeping the law? Because if you're keeping the law, that automatically would make you know more than someone, right? It's not because you're vain and you've read a book and now you're deep, right? But you keep in universal law, like Prophet David says earlier in the Psalms, he says, walk not in the counsel of the ungodly. Like you don't walk with people that's not God's. You know what I'm saying? Or have an understanding of God, the God man, or the God woman, right? Instruction 103. How sweet are thy words to the taste, yea, sweeter than honey to the mouth. Islam, Morris? Verse 106. I have sworn that I will perform it, that I will keep thy righteous judgments, right? Go to, somebody go to Holy Quran and More Science Temple of America, chapter 34. Chapter 34, instructions 7 and 8.
Instructions 7 and 8.
Yes. 34, 7 and 8. Brother Khalid?
Yeah. said 30.
34, instruction 7.
Okay. Sincerity?
Yes.
Listen,
Allah.
Yet with prudence and caution he opens his lips. He studieth what is right and speaketh with discretion.
Read the next instruction.
He adviseth with friendship. He reproofs with freedom, and whatsoever he promises shall surely be performed.
So his word is his bond, right?
Word is bond.
Right. Islam. Verse 106 in Psalms 119, I have sworn and I will perform it. Right, Islam? So keeping one's word is law. It's not optional. And it's ancient laws. The Prophet talks about your ancient divine creed. Islam. Verse 109, my soul is continually in thy hands. I do not forget thy law. Islam? All right. Instruction 111, in verse 111, thy testimonies have I taken as a heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart. You know, somewhere in the Holy Quran, the Moorish Science Temple of America, talks about, it not being that, just the heritage of, Jew or Greek. Is the heritage of every man of every clime and time.
Resurrection.
Islam. Talking about the resurrection.
Exactly.
Islam. But it talks about that heritage though. That vast estate. Islam. But it's rooted in the law. All right. A couple more verses more. I'm going to burn the Moors. Verse 130. Make plain thy word and enlighten and give understanding to the simple. So our people are simple people, Moors. Don't burden them with all that. Like Allah has gifted you. Let's say this again, Morris. Look up, Morris. Allah has gifted you, okay? So you can talk about the universe. Y'all, you know what I'm saying? Y'all unlock, y'all got a bunch of keys. Y'all just be flying around with the keys. Our people are simple. You ain't impressing them. You confusing them. Islam? Islam, Muslim?
You confuse them when after the end of their conversation, the only thing they can say, man, you deep.
That's where you failed. Like, okay, because if after all of that, all you got was that I'm deep, I failed you just now and I apologize. But Prophet David tells you, says, make plain thy word. I give it to the brothers in the Nation of Islam under the time of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You would hear the brothers when the messenger was talking, make it plain, brother. Make it plain. Make it plain, more truth is plain. You need to adorn it and dress it all up, put a suit on it. Make it plain, right? Make plain thy word and enlighten and give understanding to the simple. Go to instruction 132. Look upon me and be merciful to me because I love thy name. Moors, you were given, and when the prophet told you who made you, and the answer, him giving you that name, you know that name was taken from you for years. So we couldn't call on the Most High in our forefathers' tongues. Islam? First word of your Moorish American prayer is what?
Allah.
He gave it back. That's a heritage. Islam? Because if you got that, then you can unlock 99 attributes. Like for Sister Hope Maya-El, the attribute for that is El Shafi. El Shafi is the healer. And if you're going to chant it, El Shafiyu, El Shafiyu, El Shafiyu, and you can do that a certain number of times. We'll give the number later. But the point is that, you can unlock, depending on what you're having a rough finance week, El Razaku, the provider. Islam? But all that is predicated on Allah. I love his name. Islam? This is met on that, that's, matter of fact, the Quran of Mecca says that is the best of names for Allah. Is Allah. Islam? They use the word husna in Arabic, which means beautiful, most beautiful of names, right? It says, 34, deliver me from the oppression of man, so will I keep thy statutes. So we ask for freedom, right?
Yeah.
Why? Why do we want to be free? We don't like what the European is doing because X, Y, and Z, You want to be free, but why? Once you get free, what are you going to do? Right? So it's right here. Right? What you say? So I will keep thy statutes. So you get free to keep the law. Right? Y'all heard of the Maccabees before? Right? Write it down because the PDF is online. First Maccabees, chapter 3, when they talk about Judah Maccabee. We got to do a whole history on these cats. These cats, when the Romans were violating the temples, all that type of stuff, they was like, it's enough of that. We're going to put an end to that today.
How you spell it?
Maccabee, Maccabee. think it's double E. 1 B, 2 E's. Maccabee. It's a family of them. But Judah was like the main. Judah, for those that watch Ertugrul, Judah Maccabee is Ertugrul. From the Hebrew perspective.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
You know, he was the one like the, you know, they called him the lion's whelp. Like he was the one that, the chief one, and his brothers would follow him and they would go. Yeah. And for those like, you know, even like before or even after a meeting, in the old Bible, the 1850 Bible, the book of Maccabees is in there. So if you want to crack it open and just, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's in there. All right. Make thy face, I'll read 35. Make thy face to shine upon thy servant and teach me thy law. 136, rivers of waters run down my eyes because they keep not thy law. I see that, you know, that's how we get the feeling about our people, because they suffer because of, you know, the things they continue to do. Islam, because they find themselves outside of the law. 142, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is truth. Okay, and the last one I'll be reading for this evening, 144, the righteousness of thy testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live. So in other words, you know, from the everlasting of the past to the never-ending days to come. That's truth. That's Allah. Allah is truth. Truth is all this. Islam. You know, so that's, you know, we got to get back on the law. You know what I'm saying? So when the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, is giving us these instructions, you know, he is reminding us of, it's kind of like the true and divine records of the human race are somewhat of like an owner's manual for your farm.
To drive it.
To operate it properly. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to know, like, you know, this thing right here can take a whole bunch of abuse, especially the Asiatic form. And in its taking of abuse, you think you're getting away from the law, but you're really not, because eventually it catches up, right? But if you were in sync with law, you'd live longer. You'd be peaceful. If you only lived 20 years, you'd feel like you lived 100. You know what I mean? Because each second would mean something. Islam Moors? You know? And I'm going to show you how the European demonstrates hypocrisy and deceit. In a book entitled, so I'll keep my page. An Imperfect God, George Washington, His Slaves, and the Creation of America. Right? Now look at the cover of this book, boys. George Washington and his slaves. And did slaves dress like this? You see the brother in the back?
Oh no.
What's his name? Prince
Whipple. Yeah. That brother's name is Prince Whipple. Whipple. Prince Whipple. Prince Whipple was one of George Washington's handlers, Moorish handlers. George Washington had a couple of Moorish handlers. Another one's name was Abdul Hamid. Abdul Hamid, and they cover that in this book, taught George Washington social graces and how to. Abdul Hamid, yes, Hamid. Abdul Hamid was the one that taught George Washington social graces and how to entertain diplomats as company. Moorish hospitality. Basically.
What does Hamino mean?
Grateful. Alhamdulillah, or praise.
My name Khalid Mujahid.
Islam. Hamid is to praise. Hamada is Islam. So in that sense, it would be to praise forever. Allah is Allah, you know, in the sense of Allah El Hamidu. That means the praised. He's the one that receives the praise. We're the one. Like you ask Arabs, what does Muhammad mean? They say, oh, he who is worthy of praise. We don't worship Muhammad. No, Muhammad was he who praised forever. Islam.
What was the name of that book?
It's called An Imperfect God. Right?
Both these brothers was George Washington's
handlers. So, you know, there was a lot of going back and forth with George Washington. Because again, remember George Washington, the first nation to recognize America as an independent country was Morocco. So there was a lot of going back and forth. Ben Franklin, Jefferson, all them was going back and forth to Morocco, getting instructions, coming back, learning how, because, you know, they had never lived, you know, independently of the British crown. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So they were getting instruction from the Moorish Sultan. And, but to show how the European demonstrates hypocrisy and deceit, like the individual that in that pamphlet, Liberation Without Gods, and how he was railing on religion, right? This is in the same book, An Imperfect God. It says, let's go down. It says, I'll just take it from here. It'll be the second paragraph, but I'll prepare the ground. In the 1700s, a traveler of the common sort would doff his hat and bow as if he encountered a well-born gentleman on horseback. Such gentlemen stood out not only because of their fine clothes, but because of their peculiar he uses a curse word, I can't use it, certain kind of way of gallop. There were many such potentates on the Neck, which is a region of Virginia, but none could match Robert Carter. Write that name down. Very interesting history there. There's certain rich aristocratic families in Virginia. Robert Carter was one of those, who bounced along the road in a gilded carriage. The possessor of 1,000 slaves and 300,000 acres of land, Carter was easily the wealthiest man in Virginia. His power earned him the appellation King Carter. Though Carter's enormous house on the northern neck, Carotoman, is long gone, he did leave behind one of Virginia's most enigmatic architectural treasures, the jewel-like Christ Church near the eastern end of the neck. Christ Church happens to be the name of the city where the shooting happened in New Zealand. I don't know if y'all remember that, but that's named after this. So that church was named after something that was going on in America. No one knows who designed it, but the anonymous architect created a profoundly spiritual structure, an apparently simple brick construct whose soaring interior makes the mind leap towards the internal. Here we go. Churches such as this one also served as the focus of temporal power. Attendance at Sunday services was required of all by law to attend Sunday school and service, right? And all heads of households were taxed to support the church. This is 1700s Virginia and America, Europeans. The church's governing body, the vestry, where have you heard that word before?
Moore's question is.
How's it worded?
Vestrymen.
Vestrymen. Right, exactly. And it talks about wardens, vestrymen, or whatever name they may choose to adopt. And we use sheiks, right? So here we talk about the vestrymen. It says the vestry had quasi-public functions, including unusual police powers. So the vestrymen were the vanguards of the church. Okay? The church wardens, demonstrating that, naturally kept an eye out for those who neglected to attend services. They were the investigators. These, and wardens is found somewhere else, junior and senior, but that's another. These miscreants were reported to county court. Reporting was simple because the vestrymen usually served as county justices as well, and fined, the proceeds going towards the support of the church. Since churches provided support for orphans and abandoned children, church wardens were always alert for births of illegitimate children who might become an expense for the church. The wardens hauled mothers into court where they were duly fined. The mothers, the churches, formally and informally were depots of local gossip, news, and official pronouncements. Runaway slaves could be outlawed. Brother Akil, could you hand me that Night of the Living Dead pamphlet? Runaway slaves could be outlawed, meaning that they were thenceforth outside the protection of the law. Islam more. Read that again. Runaway slaves could be outlawed, meaning that they were thenceforth outside the protection of the law and could be legally killed with impunity. Sound familiar? Because they had ceased to exist as far as the law was concerned. Negro, black, and colored. Notices identifying outlaws were customarily nailed to the door of the church where all could see them, where they became a sharp symbol of the distinction between the saved and the damned. So those that were outlaws or outside the protection of the law were considered damned by the church. Islam, that's the earthly salvation of the Christian church right there, right? So at a certain point when the Europeans first came to this country, they were on a religious foundation, right? But probably because how their forefathers wielded it, a lot of them ran from it because it was abuse of power. Islam? Now that, connivance of the law. Islam Morris, right? Let's get a drawing on that outlaw and then we'll get ready to lower the meeting. Okay, we're drawing from Night of the Living Dead, Remedies for Civil Death, lesson number 1, authored by myself. Page 1, it says, if there exists anyone upon the earth's bountiful land that cannot prove these things, then they are outside the construct of law, known at law as an outlaw. An outlaw is a person who has been deprived of the benefit of and protection of the law, a lawless person, a habitual criminal, a person, organization, or nation under a ban or restriction because it is considered to be in violation of international law or custom. And that's drawn from Black's Law 7th edition. Islam, Morris? All right? So again, our people are unwittingly finding themselves in that classification of being an outlaw because they don't obey the law.
Indeed.
Islam? The Prophet tells us, obedience to law is one of the things that the Moorish American is about. So when you hear Moors talking about, I had a Moor I was talking to today, and he was talking about, he was a tax protester. Believe we shouldn't pay taxes. One of our Moorish American forefathers, Grand Sheik Timothy Dingle Hill, said only slaves don't pay taxes. Free men pay taxes. Islam? Remember what it said? It said 3/5 of all persons and Indians not taxed. Islam, because their status at that time, they were outside of protection of the law. Islam, hence there's no need to tax them because they're property. Islam, but the whole thing of waking our people up, getting them to understand, the benefit of law and of how the true and divine records were misused by the European nations for their purpose, but that doesn't mean it wasn't right. You know what I'm saying? It means they abused it. Islam? That's just like the laws that are on the statutes and ordinances that are on the books now. It doesn't mean that, this stuff is, wrong per se. Like example, there should be speed limits. Oh, should nobody ever tell me how to navigate my conveyance? So when somebody's driving 120 miles an hour and Allah forbid kills your daughter in a car accident, you still don't believe there should be any speed limits? I mean, I personally think it should be psychological evaluations to purchase a firearm. Because I have to take a test in order to drive, but I could just go in and buy a handgun. Yeah, you get a background check, but there's nothing psychological. Islam? But again, these are things that we have to bring to the table, as those who know what law is. Islam, Morris? And Islam, Morris?
I just want to say, because you said something before, when I first joined the temple, we were speaking about, you have people who think they're equipped with the letter of the law, but they lack the divine
Spirit.
law, the spirit of law, which is the understanding of, if we don't have stop signs in our neighborhood, our children play, and you just passing through, speeding through the stop sign, in time you're going to hit somebody. So you have certain things that's set up, which is preventive measures that stop you, which goes in your pocket, because you're not going to hit somebody sometimes until your finances mess with it.
Mo, you sparked something, Mo. I was going to leave it alone, but you. Why you do that to me, Mo? So back to the Odyssey of Ibn Battuta, right? I want to draw from page 44 in that, but before I do, let me prepare the ground. Chapter 45, it's one instruction. Chapter 45, instruction 7. The Turks are the true descendants of Hagar, who are the chief protectors of the Islamic creed of Mecca, beginning from Muhammad I, the founder of the uniting of Islam by the command of the great and universal God Allah. Islam? Instruction, part south, page 44 in the Odyssey of Ibn Battuta. In ancient times, Turkey was called Anatolia, right? And that's Anatolia, right? In his day, Anatolia was known as Balad al-Rum, which he translates as the land of the Greeks. That's not true, it's a bad translation. Balad al-Rum is actually the country of the Romans. Al-Rum is the Romans. Yeah. Balad means country, or the country of the Romans. And in his own words, was one of the finest regions in the world. In it, God has brought together the good things dispersed through other lands. So this was like a commercial meeting hub, in this area of what you have now is Turkey. That's Turkey. Nevertheless, our traveler's Anatolian adventures do reflect another world and himself as one consciously crossing a frontier. It was his first venture into a land whose Muslim population was largely Turkish. Muslims overall were likely still a minority, perhaps the largest and a rapidly increasing one. The first migrations of Turkish pastoralists from Inner Asia had begun to pass through I'm just going to spell it. Transoxania. I'm not even going to try it. Maybe some of you linguistic scholars, because I'm not going to try that. Into Persia in the early in the 11th century, led by the Turkish clans of the Seljuks. So this is Ertugrul. That's when the Seljuks, they were the power, right? The Turkish clan of the Seljuks, who were already Sunni Muslims, they entered Baghdad in 1055. Now keep the timeline in mind. We don't do timelines. Keep the timeline in mind. 1055. Ousted the Caliphate's Shia rivals and thereby restored the dignity of the Abbasid rule, if not its former power. Several branches of Seljuks came to dominate in the Middle East, the longest surviving of them being the Seljuks of Rum, R-U-M, based in southern Anatolia. Following a decisive defeat of a Byzantine army in 1071, the Seljuks founded their capital, Konya, K-O-N-Y-A, the ancient city of Iconium in 1081. Further, they demonstrate holy cities. They're building holy cities as they go, right? Further penetration of Turkmen, write that word down, Turkmen, T-U-R-K-M-E-N. This is how they refers to the Turks in the ancient records, as Turkmen, right? This is really when they're coming out of being nomads and they're coming into building cities and settling in. The Turkmen groups led to the creation of a number of separate principalities, chiefly in the interior Anatolian plateau. Another major defeat of the Byzantine forces in 1176 effectively ended Christian hopes of restoring their former dominion of the whole of Anatolia. With the Mongol invasions of the Middle East in the next century, the Sultan of Konya became the Mongol vassal in 1242, and in 1307, the Sultanate collapsed in circumstances that remain obscure. William of Rubric, who passed through the region in 1253, estimated the Muslims to only be a tenth of the population. 20 years later, Marco Polo said of Anatolia, or Turkey, as he called it. So Turkey is a Marco Polo phrase, right? As he called it, was inhabited by three races. The Turkmen, a primitive people who worshiped Muhammad, not true, spoke a barbaric tongue and lived off their flocks. They were nomads, right? And the Greeks and Armenians, who mingled with the Turkmen in villages and towns and engaged in commerce and crafts as well as culture. A quarter of a century after the Seljuk downfall, Ibn Battuta observed that there were still large numbers of Christians in the region living under the protection called Dhimmi, D-H-I-M-M-I, in the Quran of Mecca. D-H-I-M-M-I. That's when you have to pay the poll tax because you're not a Muslim. So you had to pay a special tax because you weren't Muslim. Of Turkmen rulers to whom the jizya, and that's another one, J-I-Z-Y-A, and other taxes were paid. That an ethnic mingling and religious transformation of Anatolia had long been underway was certain, this leading up to 1453. Although it is impossible to judge the precise mix and religious composition of the population at any given stage. 2 more paragraphs. It was not a cultural shock Ibn Battuta experienced, as has been suggested. True, he was confronted suddenly by the strange ways of the Turks, but he describes his encounter first by the positive contrast expressed by saying, "Blessed in Syria and kindliness in Al-Rum," explaining that this referred to the people of the land, the Turks. He continued, and this is the quote from Ibn Battuta, "Whenever we stopped in this land, whether at hospice or a hospitable place, in Arabic it's called Zawiya, Z-A-W-I-Y-A, Zawiya, or a private house, our neighbors, both men and women," and he makes the point to say the women of the Turks did not veil themselves, they didn't wear veils, came to ask after our needs. Now they're visitors. What do you need? Remember we talked about hospitality a couple weeks ago. When we left them to continue our journey, they bade us farewell as though they were our relatives and our own kin. And you would see the women weeping out of sorrow because of our departure, for just visitors.
Wow.
Chief protectors of the Islamic creed in Mecca. Islam Moors?
Islam.
So I just wanted to draw off that excellent read. I actually purchased this when I was at the Emory University Museum. Has a library right outside of, not a library, a bookstore. And they have a lot of scholarly records inside of there. The Odyssey of Ibn Battuta, phenomenal record. Brother Khalid, that was your fault. I didn't even plan. I brought it up, I was like, I'm not gonna burn the Moors. Islam, Moors, Islam. And with that, I lower the meeting. Islam?
Islam.
Islam?
Islam.
Islam. The Moorish Science Temple of America, Noble Drew Ali founder, home office, Chicago, Illinois, March 11th, 1929, a warning from the Prophet to be read in every meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must put an end to all radical and agitating speech while on their jobs, homes, or on the public streets. We advocate peace and not destruction. Stop trying out your cards with the Europeans, for it causes confusion. There's been much confusion caused by members trying out their cards. The cards are for your salvation. Failure of obeying my orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, Justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members that seek to hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet or to violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet, and if they lose confidence in their prophet, give up your card and button, cease wearing your turban or fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. For this is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet sing out a divine plea to all true Moorish Americans that they may do their part in protecting the prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Peace. Noble Drew Ali. Islam? Islam. Islam? Islam. 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 Praise Allah and honors to his holy and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Islam, Morris? Islam. Honors to the prophet David, who stressed that we must obey the law. Honors to the prophet Noble Drew Ali, who says all true Moors must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet. Islam, Moors? Islam. All right, so we Moors, we must obey the law. We got to stop trying to find ways to get around the law. We have to obey the law. Tomorrow, New Era, our family at New Era Atlanta is throwing the Hood to Hood event. You know, I have requested, I don't ask much from the Moors, but I've requested at least 4 Moorish American Muslims from Temple Number 19, members, brothers specifically, brothers, go there because it's a rough territory. But I want our people to see, you know, brothers that are upright, independent, and fearless. You know, I want them to see the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. You know what I'm saying? That's why I requested. Yeah, I know it's gonna be hot tomorrow, right? But guess what? Your forefathers are from Northwest Africa. You'll be all right. Islam, Morris? All right. And you know, and I want our family at New Era Atlanta, Brother Judge, you know, to see that we support them in their endeavors. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want people to come to our meetings and, you know, we won't go to nobody else's. You know what I mean? That's not how our record reads. That receive and confer mutual helps and reciprocal. That mutual and reciprocal is huge. Islam, Morris? You know? And, you know, I'm sorry if the redundancy of what the prophet, actually, no, I'm not sorry. The redundancy, let me tell you something that the Moorish elders taught, and this was kind of mouth to ear, but it's declassified, nothing deep. The repetitive nature of Sunday school and Friday holy day is actually a weeding out process. You know, it's designed to be such to see who the last remaining or the last standing will be. Those are the ones who you can get the work done with. Islam, Morris? You know, like there's a story that the old Grand Sheiks tell. It said one day, say the prophet was in the temple. Said the temple was packed, right? And Pastor, we with you, holy prophet. We with you. We lay out. We die for you, holy prophet. We die for you. And at that moment, you know, 3 ruffians kicked in the door, guns, wielding the guns. Said, anybody who don't leave right now, we'll kill you. People flew out the temple past them, right? Only a handful stayed, right? And the ruffians put their handguns down and said, now we can get the meeting started because the hypocrites have left. Islam, Morris? You know, there's an oral statement that says, the prophet came to the meeting one time, the meeting was crowded. The prophet said, what are all these people doing here? Only a handful of them are gonna be saved. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that whole thing about numbers and crowded rooms and all that's cool and it has its place, right? But when you talk about real work, we know, and I've been doing this long enough to know, that when a call goes out for work, only a handful will show. Those are your faithful. Islam? You know, and that's always been. You know what I'm saying? Jesus had a lot of disciples, but he had 12 hardcore. You know what I'm saying? And even amongst them, there was only a couple. Only a couple. You know what I mean? Of which his chief disciple, if you really know the records, wasn't even one of the brothers. It was a sister, Mary Magdalene, his wife. Islam, but she had her own. Google when you get a chance. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. What? It's fragmented. You can only read pieces of it. We know where the rest of it is, but yeah, you know, it's on 109 square acres somewhere, underground. Islam, somebody for earthly salvation. But she got a record too. And the disciples, when they found out that she was in third heaven, you know, and she was an executive ruler, and she knew things that they didn't. You know, how could the master make her? And then one of them said, well, you know, if the master gave it to her, she must have deserved it. Exactly. She must have been worthy.
Is that in there? In that one?
No, it's not over there. But if you Google that, PDF is online. Yeah, that's a tough piece. And it's only, like I said, it's only a couple pages, but she got some degrees. You know, that, the Gospel of Philip and the Gospel of Thomas, those are some pretty Kingdom of Heaven is within and all that. Tough pieces. But more, you know, so, you know, again, just time to get some work done and, you know, and get out to our communities, bringing up Prophet Noble Raleigh to, you know, to Asia so we can unite Asia. Islam Morris, everyone please rise, face the east, right ahead of you. Stand on your square, 5 on the left, 2 on the right, invoking the sacred presence of 7 Elohim that created everything that ever was, is, and evermore to be. Please repeat after me. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Islam, Morris. Praise Allah.
Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah.